Evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order our bi-monthly meeting for the Marin Water Board of Directors on October 10, 2023. Terry, if we could have a roll call, please.
Yes. Good evening. Director Larry Russell.
Here.
Director Matt Sampson.
Here.
Director Jed Smith.
Here.
Vice President Kush.
Here.
And President Schmidt.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. A motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved. Second.
Terry, a vote on the agenda, please.
Yes. Director Russell.
Aye.
Director Sampson.
Aye.
Director Smith.
Aye.
Vice President Kush.
Aye.
And President Schmidt.
Aye.
Thank you.
We'll be convening to a closed session next. So before we do that, do we have any public comments on items in the closed session?
There are none, and there were none for adoption of agenda.
Thank you.
So you're convening.
So we will adjourn and convene to the closed session.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So our closed session adjourned at 6:30 p.m. with no actionable items to report. Terry, next item are any public comments on items that are not on the agenda?
Yes, we have a couple. The first two that I have are Phil Sauter and Larry Minikis.
Good evening. Most days I look at the district's webpage on water production and storage to see if it has any stories to tell. I found the past week's numbers enlightening, especially when compared with the same week last year. This past week, we produced about 24 million gallons a day, or 126 gallons per person per day. For the same week last year, we produced 21.5 million gallons per day, or 112 gallons per person per day. So we're starting October by using about 12.5% more water per capita than we did last year. The numbers I've seen, such as the data we send to the state and the Flume study we did a few months ago, suggest that we're using about 50 gallons per person per day indoors. If that number stayed steady from last year to this year, we can calculate that outdoor water use and leaks have increased year over year from 62 gallons per capita per day to 76 gallons per capita per day. That's an increase of 22.5%. While I sure won't look at 1 week's data to predict a trend, I think we can say that there's no strong signal that folks are better at conserving than they were last year. The other numbers that caught my eye were the sources of the water we produced this year relative to last year. The first week in October last year, we took 82% of our water from our own reservoirs and 18% from the Russian River. For the same week this year, we took only 50% from our reservoirs and the other 50% from the Russian River. This has contributed to our reservoirs being at 85% capacity this year versus 72% last year and well above average for this time of year of 68%. So in spite of not conserving as much this year, we're doing a great job of keeping our reservoirs full. I think the district's shift to taking more water from the Russian River has been a good one. In fact, if we could continue to rely more heavily on Sonoma water while reducing our potable water use outdoors, I think we could significantly extend the number of years our current reservoir capacity could tide us over during periods of drought. That's my goal, and I hope it's one we all share. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can do this. This is a sad occasion with the passing of Roger Roberts. And, you know, we miss his cheerful presence here this evening. I mean, it's just 2 weeks ago, you know, and for me, I didn't really write a speech. I just wrote a couple of notes. You know, he was a colleague, a mentor. he was my role model, you know, and he was always a true gentleman with everyone. But most of all, you know, he was a cherished friend. And as some of you may know, his wife Dee passed a couple of years ago, and it made him very sad. But within that, he always had this optimism that always shone through at all these meetings, and anywhere you were with Roger, there's always this underlying joy in his just being present, you know. He always acted without any self-interest whatsoever, and he always spoke his mind, but he always had his facts lined up, you know. And I'll just tell a little story. You know, Roger lived around the world, as many of you know, and I had to look this up today. The Whalers played on July 2nd, 2010 at the Marin County Fair. And Roger, I'm there watching, and Roger is running around with a full-size Jamaican flag, running back and forth around the entire island for several times. I'm like, it made me laugh, let me tell you. So I want to share that little story. You know, he was a kind, generous soul. You know, he was a hero to me, and I think to many others. And with that, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You
Next,
miss him too, Larry.
I know, we all miss him. I know. Thank you.
Miss Nona Dennis and Miss Marilyn Price.
Good evening. Less than 2.5 weeks ago, I was chatting with Roger Roberts and I think Stephanie Moulton Peters' fundraiser, and there were a number of you there. And we were talking about water. We were talking about financing. We were talking about a number of things, but he was there. And that weekend he had a stroke, and strokes being random as they are, one can never predict how they will proceed, how the person will survive or not survive. And it was inevitable. It seems that he was one who would not. You know, we've lost a lot of environmental icons this year, but none of them really has hit me. And friends I've lost this year in my demographic. But I don't think I've been as deeply hit, saddened, and angry at the loss of Roger. I met him about 20 years ago. First, I think, all Marine Conservation League Association. We worked on committees together. He chaired the Parks and Open Space Committee, and I kind of followed him with that. He was president for 2 years, and I followed him with 3 years maybe of being president. But we worked together on a number of committees. He started the first climate action group at at MCL. But his real love was water. And he and Larry and Ann Thomas and Priscilla Bull were sort of our water watchers. And we still have Roger, we still have Ann, we still have Priscilla, and we still have Larry. But Roger, with his deep understanding and experience in public finance, brought to the table, to you, to us, a kind of experience that we at Marine Conservation League simply could not duplicate. I think over the years, he has been an immense service to this district. His ideas may not always have jibed with yours, but he's been there and he served diligently on the Citizens Advisory Committee, I think on finance, on rates.
Great. Yeah.
So in some manner, I think he needs to be recognized as not just someone who has followed and tracked and cares about the water district, but has also been a contributing kind of member on the side for you. So we should honor him. You should honor him. We should remember him. And it's just really, really hard to lose him.
Thank you, Miss Davis. Marilyn Price.
Yes, well, I'm so sorry to hear about Roger. I'm new to joining your meetings, and I know he has joined most of the ones I've been on, and how much people like Roger and Phil and Larry and all of those that do join and have been for a long time, most appreciative of all of them. And my comment tonight, I can't stick around for the rest of your meeting, but I just wanted to mention something in regard to conservation. We got our water bill for our home with 4 people, and it only went up $18 last month. And I just feel so sure that with a great deal of emphasis on conservation, along with a lot of public education, Marin could lower their water consumption significantly. And I hope to see, as I continue to participate in this, that there are a lot of ways that can be found that we can turn to this conservation measure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Price. And Mr. Clayton Smith?
Yeah, I don't see the clock. There it is. The clock is on. Well, it's begun to rain already. And I get rumors that this is going to be another wet winter. And sadly, given the possibility that an El Nino is coming, here we are, and we haven't added any capacity to the system. And like last year, this tells me that, well, we won't be able to take advantage of the possibility that we'll have a bumper crop of precipitation coming up and coming our way. And I would hope that this would be on the agenda, certainly as much as conservation, particularly given the desire of the folks in Sacramento to increase the housing in the county by 8%. The other thing that came to my mind recently is during your discussions about supplies and integrating this system into the rest of the Bay Area system. And there was during that time of discussion that there was a dam or a reservoir that was being at least speculated on to be built up in the Central Valley someplace in betwixt and north of Sacramento and Vacaville. Well, we now have the information that a group of Silicon Valley billionaires have bought 81 square miles up there south of Travis Air Force Base. And this is an area that is actually larger than the actual area of San Francisco itself. And they are going to plan, they're actively planning to build an entire new city up there. And so I immediately connected the dots that reservoir that we were talking about here last year, I think, as a potential source of additional reserves for the Bay Area may actually be already pre-designated for a source of water for this giant new smart city the billionaires in Silicon Valley have put on their agenda. And so this is something I think the board should look into. What's going on and what impact is building a new city that could house another 1 million people here in Northern California going to have as an impact on all of our water. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Thank you, everybody. I do want to note that we will close this meeting today with a special recognition for Roger. But our next step is to move to directors' announcements or comments. Monty, anything? We'll start with you.
No, nothing from me, though I will have to leave the meeting a little bit earlier this evening, but no, nothing else for me.
Thanks, Monty. Larry?
I have a couple things. I attended the Water Environment Federation meeting in Chicago last week, It was a very well-attended meeting, 27,000 attendees. They're back. They got down into I think the single digit thousands in between with COVID. And now they're back to basically with the full size. Was 2 bays of the McCormick Center, which is the one with all the birds that committed suicide the other day. So it was a very well-attended meeting, very effective and very interesting. The other thing I'd like to say, and I see Paul sitting there, and that's where Roger was sitting the last time I spoke to him, which was a couple of weeks ago at one of our board meetings. And it as Nona said, it is hard to imagine him not being there. I doubt that most of you even know that Roger applied for the board position that Armando got. And frankly, if Roger had not been so quiet, I don't know a better word than that, I would have voted for him to do that, because I didn't realize he had served on the city council prior to applying for that job. If he had just said that, that would have been enough to sway me, although Al Boro was very effective at pushing Armando. So anyway, I consider Roger to be a good friend, and I know it was always painful after his wife died. It was painful to see him to me. It was a different person who had really a lot of the light bulb had gone out in his heart, I think, when his wife died. But a wonderful person, brought a lot to the board and to the water district about finance, as Nona said. He was a very good sounding board and had a lot of experience with the Bank of America and international and national work with them. So anyway, he's going to be sorely missed. I will make the commitment. We'll get something put together, maybe a bench in the watershed or something to that effect. Something will happen. We'll get something more than just closing this meeting in honor of Roger. He did a lot for the board, and we want to honor that. That's all.
Great. Thanks, Larry. Jed?
Yeah, I'll just like to add that I was fortunate to spend about an hour with Roger on the night before he had his stroke, and brought him to the Stephanie Moulton Peters event because he wanted to connect with Senator McGuire about his ideas around how Norway is financing capital assets and amortizing in a way that takes climate into account. And he was super excited about it, and his little boyish grin, and he thought it through, and he really wanted to see if that could happen. And unfortunately, Senator McGuire was busy, but we talked it through a lot, and I committed to him that I would try to help make that happen. And I commit that to this day, I'll try to see if we can help look at that kind of statewide implementation. And that spark would have come from quite a thoughtful, kind, sweet, brilliant mind.
Thanks, Jed. Matt?
Yep. Thanks, Ranjiv. A couple items for the board and for the public. On Thursday, the 21st, we had our watershed committee meeting back in September, and 2 really good presentations. The first was the 4-year update for our BIFIT plan. And Carl Saunders gave us a really good update on all the work that's being done. I think it's good to highlight again all of the environmental monitoring, all the surveying, all of the analysis we're doing of our watershed going into this. And so just a good reminder for the public that all this work is done with an environmental focus. And it was good to see that, especially when you're looking at the dollars breakdown of that work. One of the projects that came out of that was a highlight for me was the Pilot Knob area around Lake Lagunitas. Looking at the before and after pictures really made me feel good about the work that's being done, because it looks like it's returning to a more natural state. And it's going to look different for folks because it's looked unnatural for a long time, and unnatural starting to look natural. So bringing it back is a really good thing. But the other side of that coin is the report was somewhat sobering because of all the work that still needs to be done. The amount of acreage out there really is daunting to look at, but I'm looking forward to us continuing to partner with Marin Wildfire, the one-time agencies, so that making sure all of our work is done as part of a regional solution, especially as we look to a county-wide plan. So excited about that. The second part of it is the Lagunitas Creek update that we got from our fisheries crew, and it was good to see the return of the adult salmon population and all the good work that's being done there. So it was a great positive way to end that meeting. About a week later, Friday the 29th, I spent the day out in Tomales as part of the Tomales Bay, State of the Tomales Bay, convention. It was at the Inverness Yacht Club, and it had land managers from all across the peninsula, Inverness, Point Reyes Station, those areas, talking about all the work that are being done, and really a lot of the same similarities to the work we're being done. So it was good to see and hear from the other agencies around that are doing that part. So good update. We're right in the we're right in the mix for everything. I do have one request, Ben, and that's at the next Watershed Committee meeting, if we could get the Watershed Fund report breakdown on how that fund is looking for us as we look for potential projects in the next calendar year. And then finally, as the other board members mentioned, it was a privilege to be able to know Roger Roberts over the past year. Larry Minikis was kind enough to introduce me to him, and his interview panelists, Priscilla and Ann as well, and sitting me down and grilling pretty hard. But the one thing I took away is that Roger never had an ulterior motive. His desire was for the betterment of Marin County, and specifically Marin Water and all of its customers, and a very respectable trait that he took with him all the way to the end. So we're very fortunate. I feel very fortunate. I appreciate us closing the meeting tonight in his honor.
Thanks, Matt. I'll just do a quick thank you to staff. A couple of weeks ago, I received a request from Brookside Elementary School in San Anselmo from teachers and parents asking for engagement with Marin Water. And in a short period, they were able to arrange a classroom visit. And I just want to thank everybody for the attention that you place on school outreach. I think that does a lot. Okay, with that then, Ben, general manager's announcements.
I have no comments, although I'll just say I concur with all the positive comments about Roger. Truly a special person and a good soul.
Thanks, Ben. So on to our consent calendar. Do we have a motion to adopt today's consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, I'm trying to do my voting here. There are no comments on the consent calendar. Is that okay?
Thank you.
So, Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Sampson,
Aye.
Director Smith,
Aye.
President Schmidt,
Aye.
and Vice President Kush.
Aye. Our first regular agenda item is an overview of website homepage updates, plus our meetings and agenda hub. And Adrian, I think you'll be managing that. Thank you.
Good evening, directors. Adrian Mertens, Communications and Public Affairs Manager. And that is correct. Tonight, I am here to give a live demo, but an overview of our new website enhancements and our new meetings and agendas hub. We did soft launch on Friday, and there'll be more outreach about these new and improved tools moving forward. But wanted to also share that here publicly with those in attendance and with the board tonight. And a couple notes about this. This project, both of these projects, because it's really two separate things that work together, are meant to improve navigation and accessibility for our customers and our staff, and of course, all of our board members. And this effort was really based on website analytics we've been looking at over the last year. A lot of anecdotal feedback from customers on our website, from their struggles to where things are working to where they're not, and also from staff, and direction from the board in past communications committee meetings. And these improvements also, especially the website enhancements, which I'll get to in just a second, are really to help set us up for some of the upcoming planned outreach efforts we have, most specifically our water efficiency communications campaigns that we're working to develop. And then finally, I do want to say that these two items were pretty significant comms projects on the district's annual work plan for the year. So I'm very happy to get to present the end product. And I also want to just recognize the team that was behind working on these. Our board secretary, Terry, had a really significant role in the transition from the board meeting calendar to the meetings and agendas hub. And our communications staff, Tyler Sylvie and Jesse Underhill, both did a lot of work on both projects to get them implemented. And then I'll talk a little bit more when we get to it, but the meetings and agendas hub does require the coordination of all of our staff that contribute to our agenda packets, to writing staff reports, developing their presentations. So they've all been through training on using the site and will continue to use it internally so that it can be a successful product as a public-facing tool. So without further ado, I'm just going to kind of go through some of the features here on the website. As you can see, it does look a little bit different if you remember what it looked like before. But just to start, one kind of small but major thing we decided to do was move the translation feature to the very top of the page. That really is a best practice for website use now, and it allows our customers that need to receive their website information in a different language to easily toggle through that without having to scroll to the bottom to find it. We also decided to call out kind of our 3 top functions for customers that come to our site right at the top. Those were kind of hidden before, not readily available. So now you can quickly get to reporting an emergency leak if you need to set up service or pay your bill. And of course, that's right next to our search bar, which has moved up in priority on the page. And then one big improvement is we now have drop-down menus. These are actually throughout the site. We lacked drop-down menu navigation before. And it just allows an easier way for customers to find what they're looking for and an alternative to other ways to get to information on the website. And then this sliding banner here does rotate. We can change it out as often as we need to internally. This was really a way to add some real estate to the website that allows us to push some of the major initiatives we want our customers to be aware of, programs that are available to them. We plan to do a lot more with this around our water efficiency campaigns to really put that information top line on the web. And then we have tried to call out an easier way to find our service directory. There's a lot of reasons that customers reach out to the district. We've been tracking those. We've been talking to our customer services staff to get their feedback, other staff who answer phones and work with customers a lot. And we've reorganized our directory as well, making sure that all online forms, all contact information is organized and all in one place so people can find what they need rather quickly. Our news remains as it was before, though it now has pictures to make it more engaging. And then our meetings and agendas hub, we've called it out here. It's just a single button now. I'll go back to that and we'll go in there and take a look. But that's where all of our meetings now live, and this replaced the board calendar. And then we've added these 9 button areas, and this is really to highlight some of our kind of hot items in the district, or the things that people are looking for most often, or the things that we want them to find when they're on our site for other purposes. And so we've given them special attention here, but they just help get to specific content on the site quicker. And so now to get into our meetings and agendas hub. So again, this was a transition of the board calendar that existed before, where we post all of our meetings, all of the agendas for those meetings and presentations. They now live in this third-party site. We migrated all of that content over into here. We actually have even more meeting documents available than we did on the old system, which I think went back maybe 4 or 5 years. This goes back 10 years. So people can find lots of information on prior board and committee meetings. And so when you get to the hub, the best thing about it, in my opinion, is that all of the meetings are listed in one place, and so are their agendas once they publish, as well as the video recordings once the meeting has ended. If someone's looking for a specific meeting, they can filter by by dates, and they can also filter out by a board or committee meeting as well, to help narrow down their search. Another way to search, oh, sorry, this is my way. There we go. You can switch to calendar mode, and toggle on different months to see what meetings are upcoming. You can then find the meetings and click on them from in here. And then when you get into a meeting, and actually, we're on the 10th. Once you're in here, you can see the presentations are listed as they were before, down within the agenda item. And then when you click on the agenda packet, as you may remember, our previous agenda packets would be 80 to 100 pages, and you'd have to scroll through all those to find a specific staff report on an item if that's what you were looking for. But now you can scroll through, and all of the staff reports and documents associated with items are linked right in within the report, and it's much shorter. And so there's a lot of work behind the scenes that automates and puts this all together, and it relies on all of our staff working together in the system and using consistent procedures to make this happen. But so far, so good. This is our first meeting using it. And we're, little tweaks here and there still coming up, but so far we're doing okay. And then one other thing I do want to highlight on here, this subscribe button. So for those who would like to get notifications when our board meetings, the agenda is published for the meetings, they can come here and pick which meetings they want to subscribe for. There's actually a new feature within the tool where you can actually just get a digest of all the upcoming meetings for the week, and it'll be emailed to you once a week. For those who are already receiving notifications in our old system, we have automatically migrated them over to this new system for the meetings that they were subscribed for, but they can go in and change their settings if they'd like to, and anyone going forward that wants to sign up can do so. And then you can get back to our website from here as well. And we have put together some guidance documents just to kind of highlight some of the new features. It's written. We also have some video recordings that kind of show some of what I did tonight in the meetings and agenda hub to help people navigate and get used to the new system. But with that, I'll open for any questions.
Thank you, Adrian. That's great. Matt, maybe start with any comments from you.
This is awesome. I feel like it's a really big step in making progress. So the effort that went into it for you and the team, thank you very much. It used to be a game I'd play on how I could pay my bill online. If I could remember the steps every other month, and seeing it up top right away is easy. And what I also appreciate is that it's readily accessible from the phone too. And the mobile site is just as efficient. So awesome. One of the things that I'd like to see as we move forward, and I'm sure you have this baked into the cake already, but when we start bringing these big water projects online, even the ones we're doing right now with electrification of Sewell-Hooley and the stuff that Paul's going to talk about in just a few minutes, highlighting those, and really even to the point of like progress pictures and construction, because this is a really big investment by the community, and for them to see the progress for this would be really important to do. But main message is thank you very much. It looks a lot better, so appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Jed?
Well done. I've built a lot of websites. I think you've been super thoughtful about how to prioritize where people go and how to navigate in our mission. So well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Jed. Larry?
Absolutely. Well done. I found it a bit off-putting when I first got on it, a little tricky. But as I sat with it a little longer, I saw where it was going, and I could get to what I needed to get to. So I was quite pleased with it.
Thanks, Larry. Monty, any comments?
I just would say the same thing. It took me a second to get used to the change in format, and some of my links too, when I've got bookmarks on my computer to take me to certain things, and now those are shifted a little bit. But we were asked by our community members over the years to look at how to make our website more user friendly, and I think this is a really great step. So I really appreciate the effort that went into it, and I think we're being responsive to that desire to make the information more available, and so I appreciate again all the work that went into it. And with that, I'm going to need to leave. unfortunately, I'm sorry to say that your engagement that was set many months back. So I will need to be dropping off here in a second.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks, Monty. Yeah, Adrian, I think just like everyone else, I'm really impressed. It's so good to know that you've accomplished one of the big goals for the two of the big goals for the communications team. That's always impressive. In last month's newsletter, I really liked the newsletter last month also. And you had a link to a web page that outlined elements of the strategic water supply roadmap that I really appreciated. I'm not sure if that link or that page still exists. But it sounds like it does. I mean, please don't lose that. And as Matt said, maybe continuing to update that as we make progress. At some point, I've wondered if it would be reasonable to put up the schematic that Paul shows often to, sort of highlight the vision for the water supply roadmap. We know that there will be changes, certainly, that come but I think it's helpful for community members to understand the ambitions of what we're trying to do to achieve resiliency. But yeah, thanks a lot, Adrian.
We do have one public comment. Mr. Topher Gaylord.
I just want to say congratulations and excellent job on the updates, Adrian, and specifically the usability, the functionality, the transparency with your meetings portal is an excellent update. Although the layout is different, it's quite easy to navigate, and I really appreciate the work you've done there. A couple of recommendations for you, thoughts as you look to tweak and tune it. One, on that rotating homepage, you've got discount programs listed there. I'd encourage you to include rebates and incentives, in particular with the new rates that have come in to all of the ratepayers. Rebates and incentives are important for people to find. They are embedded deeper down in those pull down menus, but you might want to put that more prominently on that home screen and rotating. Right now, it's just discounts and programs. The other recommendation is the Water Watch. That's also a highly used area. I think another member of the public had referred to it already tonight, one of his comments. And the Water Watch right now is sort of buried inside water supply and planning. So it's a little bit of a navigation there. And so I'd encourage you to think about getting Water Watch higher. Those reservoir levels now are very impactful for ratepayers, in particular towards the end of the wet season. So thinking about Water Watch higher. And then finally, I'd encourage you in that Water Watch section to include going forward Lagunitas Creek release and flow values, both the minimum, the average, and the maximum throughout the course of the year. I think there's been a fair amount of comments that I've been getting from community members around what the rate of release is, in particular in drought years. And having consistently reporting on that is good transparency for the community, and I think helpful education. Thank you, and great job.
Thank you. There are no further Oh, it was for this? Okay. No worries. I'm sorry. And Mr. Larry Menikis.
We have two public comments. Thank you. I just want to say, the old website took some patience. It wasn't horrible. So I'm not here to say, but really, really good improvement overall, and much easier to find things now. And having the little boxes lower down on the homepage and be able to click and go to Watershed or whatever is really helpful. I'd also make just a couple of recommendations, because I spend so much time on the agendas page, is where it says view for view details. It doesn't really tell you that's the place you're going to find tonight's presentation. I don't know how you can get that across to people, but that would be helpful. And the other thing is, I didn't know there was a calendar view, and it might help to just put it right there, a hot button right on the page, calendar view. Other than that, excellent job. Thank you.
It's all the way down. Okay, go back up.
Sorry, hold on. There are no further speakers.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Next agenda item is an update on water supply development from Paul.
Good evening. Let me pull this up. Silence is deafening. Good evening, Paul Sellier, Water Resources Director. Just a comment, if you could indulge me about the work that's come out of Adrian with Terry and her whole group. I mean, they got me to complete a staff report through this new agenda management system. So, I mean, that's an acid test right there. So, good job, guys. Tonight's water supply update. We got some details in some areas. You know, these projects are moving along at not quite the even pace that we'd love to see. So they're not all at the same level of detail, but we are making some progress. So tonight we'll just we'll largely be running through the early action projects and touch on the long term before we get into some scheduling and funding updates, and then close with the next steps. So as you may recall, the stream release project, this is we just had a nice comment about stream releases, and we'll think about how we can accommodate that if possible. Our goal is to more accurately meet those stream releases with this automation project, and we've been working on it pretty consistently and with some success. So we have some job to do to install some physical equipment in the stream, and then we've got to capture this data, bring it back to us, write an algorithm that's going to utilize that data to control the valve, and then about a year's worth of sort of verification of how that's working. So update. We installed it 9/29, the same day I think Director Sampson was out at Tamales, I think you said, right? We might need to understand your whereabouts though on the on October 1st, because here's the team from Balance. They're installing the physical equipment. You see the box there, and of course the sonde that they're putting in the creek. When they came back on Monday, it wasn't there. The box had been liberated by someone. Our rangers, of course, going to work with state parks and see if there's anything we can do about it, but it's unlikely. We're planning to reinstall. Obviously, we're not going to do the same kind of light installation. It's going to be a big steel box with a couple 100 pounds worth of weight in there and chain it to a tree and this kind of thing. So, you know, it's just a marker. If you remember us saying these projects take twists and turns and they can be unpredictable. Well, and this is one of the more simple projects that we could be doing, and yet still have these kind of upsets to our schedule. We'll recover, of course, and move on. And we'll be reinstalling this month. And then, as I say, we'll be capturing that USGS data to SCADA and developing the rating curve for the equipment. And then that's Lagunitas Creek. We'll be moving over to Walker Creek at some point to do a similar installation out there. We've talked before about this optimizing our purchase of supplemental water. And this is really we haven't started much work on this, primarily because we've only just received the full model from Jacobs and from Sonoma. So our consultants just received this model. We're starting this work now. And our goal is to develop these rules for the purchase of water that are going to balance our, risk of running out of water along with cost. As you heard earlier this evening, our reservoirs are nice and high, and we've been purchasing a lot of Sonoma water, and that's enabled us to maintain those high levels in the reservoir system. Phoenix Lake, again, some developments. The engineering staff have landed on an alignment for this project. So they've got a pretty good handle on where the pipe wants to go, and you can see the route there. It's somewhere around 6,000 to 7,000 feet of pipe. that needs to be put in and a pump station. So they've hired a consultant to assist, in some of the engineering and the feasibility, along with, there are some permitting issues moving Phoenix Water into Bontempi from the regional board. They may have some concerns that we need to address, along with any concerns from our, fisheries agencies and things like that. In the process, the pipeline route that you saw does have some features that may need some geotechnical work. So there's a geotechnical team reviewing the alignment, and they're going to provide us some information on potential impacts there. And then, of course, we have CEQA that we need to comply with for this project as well. So we're working with those regulatory agencies trying to move this project along. One feature of the alignment, you may recall, was a tunnel. And here's some photographs just kind of showing, not everyone gets to see this stuff. I think the middle picture here is Tony Del Santo, and he's working there, it looks like, with a sort of a voltmeter, and he's trying to measure the thickness, I think, of the pipe or something like that. And so the conditions in the tunnel, pretty good. It looks like they'll be able to reuse that access to Bontempi. So that project will also require PG&E, a new service from PG&E. That application's in. We've got an electrical engineer RFP going out to help us with the pump station design. And then, of course, construction schedule really depends on how complex the CEQA work ends up being. I don't want to say anything at this point, but it looks like obviously that area and most of our watershed have spotted owls. So that's kind of a challenge for the construction season at the very least. So it looks like engineering here indicated there'll be 2 construction seasons for this if this project were to move forward. We can talk more about this on the funding slide toward the end. Of course, we've applied for a we're going to apply for a USBS small storage program grant. We haven't done so yet because it requires a feasibility study. So that feasibility study is underway. So once we have that feasibility study, we'll be able to submit for a USBR grant probably next year, which would mean funding in FY25. Sulhuli Pump Station. So again, this is a nice shot of Sulhuli Reservoir. Very full, just full enough to spill. It's just sort of gently cascading down the spillway there into the flip bucket design, which is an unusual design for a reservoir. I think they did quite a bit of testing on it before that was accepted. And then the plunge pool below. The pump station is just to the left there. It's the only building in the picture, and that's the one that conspicuously absent are the electricity lines. And so that's what we've been hoping to achieve is to bring electricity to that pump station so that we can operate those pumps kind of as we do any other pump station, rather than having to roll in big 1 megawatt generators and all the diesel fuel associated with those. So PG&E's load study is underway. I think the next slide suggests that they've kind of completed this study. At one point in time, they were thinking that it was okay for us. We'd be able to run one of the 800 horsepower pumps at any time. But their most recent conversations with us seem to indicate that their final results are not going to show that. In fact, that they made a mistake, that yes, you can run 800 horsepower worth of pumps, but at 8 100 horsepower pumps, which is a very different prospect, right? So we're kind of scrambling and staff are looking into alternatives to see what can be done, what our options are. And in fact, maybe we'll be making those alternative solutions from that sustainable solutions group from PG&E, making sure we take a careful look at those before we have any final decisions for you to consider on the power for Sulhuli Pump Station. So the twists and turns of these projects continue. So in summary, the project schedule is and continues to be driven by PG&E. We're looking at alternate solutions. And of course, one element of the project that we don't talk about very much is the discharge from that pump station, which currently is in pipeline up to the top of a hill, and then it's an open channel flow into Nicasio Reservoir. That open channel flow represents an opportunity for us to lose water. And so piping that all the way into Nicasio would be a good kind of final aspect of this project. funding opportunities, we're targeting the WRDA funding that we've been sort of allocated. If you recall, that's the $28 million. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that at the funding slide. And we'll be looking at other grants as and when it seems suitable. So in terms of conservation, this is conservation is really our way of, not just for California, but I feel like for Marin water in particular, it's our way of life. Many of our customers, and you've heard from a couple of them here this evening, really focus on conservation. And our efforts to develop the master plan are continuing. We, I think, held a workshop toward the end of August and invited a number of our customers to come down and spend several hours with us learning about our different programs, and opportunity for us to collect their ideas and include those ideas and address them in the master plan. And then a number of other options, from expanding gray water to allow alternate compliance for that ordinance, sunsetting of toilet and washing machines so that the staff can use those incentives in more productive areas. And then, of course, developing this innovative incentive program for non-residential customers. And Director Cush mentioned our education programs earlier this evening. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of things that we're doing in conservation, and we tend to kind of skip over them a little bit in some of these meetings. It may feel like a light update this evening, but the comms and water efficiency has its own committee. And if you recall, one of those committee meetings, there was, I think, an 82 slide deck that we went through dedicated to conservation. So we're not shying away or trying to hide. So any of our activities in conservation, we're in fact very proud of it. And on our website this evening, you may have noticed Marin Water was awarded a WaterSense grant for 2023. And that was a picture of Greg Plum holding the award there. So that's the second award I think we've had this year, and hopefully there'll be more to come. As part of our water efficiency group, they're taking a look at, through a consulting team, how to improve our water loss. If you recall, this is component we're looking at is the real water loss. So we're out there, we're interested to know, how accurate are our meters? What can we do out in the water system to prevent leaks, to reduce the volume that is caused by sort of what we might consider, with our 900 miles of pipe, it's inevitable that we're going to have leaks. So how do we think about reducing those leaks? And that's really what this is designed to achieve. We're never going to get to zero, but and we meet all the regulations at the moment around water loss, but can we do better? This continuous improvement. In terms of our longer term actions, this is a roadmap schedule, looks out a couple of years. And as you know, in terms of conveyance, we've selected Carollo engineers, and they've already kicked off that project with staff and are working. I think we have our second meeting next week, and we'll be working through to next June, May, roundabout, where we'll achieve hopefully a preferred alternative. And we'll be updating the board periodically along the way before we arrive at that preferred alternative. And you see on this graphic here, the diamonds, they represent a board action to approve the next phase of the project. So once the preferred alternative is arrived at, the next phase for conveyance and storage, as it turns out, would be the sort of 30% design of that preferred alternative. And that's a board action required before we move into that. Desalination is a little bit lagging behind these two options because it was a late addition to the SWOOS. So we got a little bit more work to do. And the board this evening approved the consent calendar, which had an item on there for us to complete that desktop analysis. And again, the diamond down below there would indicate the board approval for any further work beyond that desktop analysis would be required. So as sort of advertised a bit earlier in terms of funding, the blue square, if you want to think of it this way, is sort of funding that we feel like we've achieved. So we've got access to this. I should rephrase that. We don't yet have access to the $28 million in the WRDA, but it's allocated for us. And we had a recent trip back east to understand how can we unlock the access to that. And it was very productive. And the result of that was us going back to the San Francisco office to really get them to understand what we're trying to achieve. And it turns out our message has been received by the San Francisco office. And this project, the Sulahuili electrification project, is the #1 new start project for the San Francisco Army Corps. So we feel that's about as good as we can achieve at this point in time. And there may be other levers for us to pull as we move forward to try to get this funding to flow our way. In terms of the DWR Urban and Multi-Benefit Drought Relief Grant, that's been awarded to us, I think a couple of years ago. And the Strategic Water Supply Assessment invoices have been sent in for us to be reimbursed from that grant. We have funding applications into DWR for local water supply projects to the amount of about $53 million. So some of that is for Peacock Gap, some of that is for, local storage and for conveyance as well. It was not funded in the first round, and you'll see that you're not always successful with every grant you go after. But what's important is for us, and we're going to do this as a group at staff level, is to take those applications back, have a conversation with USBR to understand maybe where those applications can be sharpened and improved, and then we'll refocus those and resubmit them for additional funding so that we can hopefully improve our chances of getting some funding for those projects. In terms of the desalination grant, that was a small grant application we had in for $200,000 to help us support and understand the development of recycled water around the Petaluma River. Just kind of where that project is at the moment, and I suppose somewhat dependent on what the desktop analysis shows, but it doesn't seem like at this point in time it would be good for us to reapply for that particular project. In terms of the local storage, if you remember the Phoenix Lake project that I talked about, that's where this might come into play. And again, it was not funded in the first round, so we've got to kind of go back and look at how we can improve the application and target it a bit better and provide additional materials for USBR to understand the value of that project. And then finally, the last item, the USBR Applied Science Grant Program. We're currently in that grant submittal for this year will go in by October 15th. And we're looking at, it's really related to forecasting and modeling work. So we'll be trying to use short-term water supply forecasting, short-term precipitation forecasting with our current reservoir storage modeling setup to try to combine those two to better be able to predict how we purchase, when we purchase water. So that's kind of the idea behind that grant. And as I say, that'll be going into USBR middle of this month, I think is the deadline. Okay, in terms of the summary funding table, not much has really changed on here, though I think at the next update, we will see some changes. Just a couple of things need to settle out. For example, on the Marin Sonoma options, that's really our conveyance, and our budget is $500,000, but we know the Carollo contract is in excess of that. So we have some maybe juggling to do by moving funds around from 2025 and pulling them into 2024 to balance our efforts on these projects. But again, we just need to see how that overall budget is going, if we need to adjust year to year, or whether there are other areas within our budget that we can move things around. So our final next steps to continue implementing the early action projects. We're going to be have begun the work on conveyance. We have not yet started on storage. We're still negotiating indemnification language with the consultant, but hopefully that'll be wrapped up this week. And then, of course, we have the desktop analysis for the Petaluma River desalination. And then on, I guess, a pretty important item here, this fourth bullet. So we haven't talked much at all, although it is in the roadmap, right? Recycled water. So there'll be a fairly big update on recycled water at the operations committee meeting. So it won't just focus on DPR, but it will take kind of a holistic view at recycled water for us and give us an opportunity to share some information.
Maybe we should think about inviting Stephen Moore there to that meeting. I don't know if you saw the op-ed today.
I didn't see the op-ed today, but I heard about the op-ed today.
Yeah. He took a very, in my opinion, very simplistic view of the situation. And I thought it wasn't critical necessarily, but it wasn't supportive.
Yeah.
So I think we might as well, just invite him in.
Yeah, he's a super thoughtful guy. It's a good idea.
Oh. So we'll be we can invite anybody to our meetings are open, and if you'd like me to send a direct email to Mr. Moore, I'm happy.
That's what
to
I'm
do that.
thinking about. Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
It'll save me from having to write a letter to the editor.
I'll take a look at doing that tomorrow.
I thought it was particularly interesting when his agency was the one who refused to use reclaimed water to flush the sewers, even though we pushed on him very hard. I thought that was quite fascinating. He just didn't quite get around to mentioning that in the op-ed.
There's, and you know this, and I don't want to speak out of place, but there is definitely a misunderstanding oftentimes between the wastewater world and the drinking water world, and who's providing recycled water and who's distributing recycled water. And it always seems like the other guy is making so much money. So
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is that Henry Ongerth, when he headed up the health department, made it very clear that we should be using the highest quality water for the highest quality need, which of course is drinking water. And, that was where I had some problems with op-ed, that I thought it was a little short-sighted in looking at the real situation. They talked about the yuck factor and things like that, but they didn't talk about the rest of the equation.
Well, sounds like we're going to have an interesting operations committee meeting.
should be great.
I think so.
Yeah.
But I think it would be good if we're going to invite someone like that. We have an identified goal, not just an open forum to discuss editorials in the Marin Independent Journal. I think it'd be good to actually have, if he's going to be supportive of the presentation you're going to make, great. But if we're just going to hear and roast a guy,
Oh, no, he's more sophisticated than that.
okay.
He especially won't come into the lion's den and do that. Not going to happen that way. But I think he could be an effective partner for us. But like I say, I find it a little bit funny that they refuse to use the reclaimed water, and then how he's all supporting it. Huh?
I had been seeing some of the misunderstanding going on. So I've worked with Jason Dow to schedule a presentation for me to come to his board meeting.
Good.
And to share the update and to share, some thoughts on opportunities and challenges along the lines of what they're thinking, and, let them engage in a Q&A a bit.
Yeah, it would also be good if Jason would address the saltwater infiltration to make his water more usable without needing membranes. They seem to be ducking that.
Jason understands, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I think we could, during the operations committee meeting, Larry, I think that would be a good time to dive into the details and the challenges and the obstacles to recycled water.
Well, the only reason I brought it up is today's paper is the op-ed.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely.
Op-ed notwithstanding, I'm about done. We're going to continue to track and go after grants and try to get as much funding as we can for this roadmap implementation. And of course, we'll be talking with you frequently. Updates along the way.
Thanks, Paul. Always appreciate the important updates on water supply roadmap and the development. Board comments, Larry?
Oh, I think I pretty well spoke my piece.
Jed?
Yeah, a couple of comments. Paul, thank you for the report. I think it's important to know that funds that are quote unquote earmarked, like the Army Corps of Engineer funds, take time. It's not like it's yours. You got to go prove it. You have to have the feasibility studies done. You have to be thoughtful about the approach, and some of these last decades. But we are in an emergency still. We were the first municipal water agency in the state of California declared a drought emergency by the governor. And I still consider us in one, even though it rained today. So let's get our act going and let's go get as much of that as we possibly can. And I think we're off to a really, really good start. The Bureau of Reclamation funds, I actually heard slightly more positive opportunities for us than I think you may have represented. I think we really do have some good potential. We fit their mission and what they're meant to achieve with the smaller storage opportunities, particularly potentially with the Muir Beach need, but there are others. And so I think that what I heard is an encouragement to continue, go to Denver and push those as far as we possibly can. And so I know you're doing that, but I just want to make sure that, you know, we don't come across as saying that that's a zero. I think we really have some opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks.
Matt?
No, thank you, Paul. And it was good to see a lot of the progress and also to the efforts that have been going on from you and board and staff to get additional funding to help move these along faster. And it's also good to see that the tunnel between Phoenix and Von Tempe is usable. So that's a good sign too. I do get a little concerned about the PG&E issue at Sewahuli because I still think that's going to be a critical component, or at least shows the potential to be a critical component of a resilient system as we talk about the longer term projects. So if there's anything we can do as a board to help with whatever we can do with that piece of it, please let us know sooner than later, because I think it's going to be, I'd hate to lose out on operating that reservoir whenever we wanted to, if we could.
Yeah, on that, we're going to get it done. One potential, for example, would be, do we find ourselves where we need a permanent generator out there? But the project does need to happen, and we do understand the board direction, and we'll be coming back with the options that we see. And there may be, you know, short term and then much longer term upgrades to PG&E pump substations and the like.
It also seems to me that there's a potential to wind that motor up, you know, with heavy duty soft start. There may be a way to make it think it's 8 100 horsepower motors, because there's no rush to create the inrush. You know, there's no need to bang that motor on. You could bring him up very slowly, and basically allow the power system to adapt. I assume what they're concerned about is us dimming the lights in West Marin when we start, every time we start that pump.
Flicker, yeah. And we're working, we're not giving up. It's just my winning personality that comes over a little negative sometimes, but I don't want to false positives either, right? We are showing you a little bit the omelet as it's cooking and as we're making it. So appreciate you guys coming along for the ride on some of these projects that normally, you know, you might not see. You would just sort of 6 months later, you'd have a report and it comes out. You guys are seeing it before the ink is dry.
Well, I just have a few technical questions and comments, so I'll run through and then you can decide which ones you want to respond to, which ones you want to ignore. You've told us so many times how we estimate stream releases right now prior to, you know, using better sensors, data loggers. Could you just, remind us of how we're measuring stream releases right now? As you know well, I'm a little skeptical on our ability to use models to refine our purchasing strategies for water from Sonoma. Maybe as that is starting to come together, it sounds like you're working through the contract details now with the consultant. It would be maybe helpful to have a presentation at some point on exactly what they'll be looking at to see how we can, what are the options? What variables would they be trying to tweak to see if we can get to, better outcome, better strategies, I would say, for modeling. Mm-hmm. On Phoenix Lake, in the past, we've talked about the possibility of pumped storage hydropower. You have noted that we will be receiving the full consultant's report, and that will be an evaluation of opportunity or lack of opportunity will be included. So just, want to make sure that doesn't fall off the table. Just wanted to check on the water efficiency master plan. That's EKI Water that's doing the the master plan
That's
for
right.
us?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to confirm that. That's it, Paul. Thank you.
I can address your stream releases, and I think we are going to come back to you with some details, probably at an ops meeting, November ops on modeling. So measurement of the stream releases is right now done by the USGS. That's our control point in our agreement with the state board, right, for these releases. So that's the kind of final arbiter. And the issue is that that's 6 hours away from the release valve. And there's a lot of watershed between those 2 points. And so in the summertime, it's not a big deal to be able to predict release and measurement. There's no other inputs other than maybe evaporation. So a hot afternoon day, you may think you have your stream gauge dialed in or your releases dialed in, but it'll just drop, 1/10 of an inch or something, and then you're off on your releases. So generally releases tend to be a little bit higher than you need them to be. So the stream gauge that we're putting in is going to reduce that lag. It's going to allow us to, over time, develop a correlation between that nearer stream gauge and the control point stream gauge, and just kind of understand under what different weather conditions might impact, those flows that we don't have control of in the spring and maybe in the early winter time tend to be when there's kind of a great deal of variability in flow, and that should help us there. So that's the stream releases at the moment. And to make changes, it's kind of a manual thing. Somebody goes on to the USGS website, looks at the flow, understands if we're meeting our set point or not, and then makes a phone call to operations to effect a change at the release valve.
Well, that's better than 2 cans in a string. It's a losing stream or a gaining stream, or do you know between those 2 points?
I think it depends on the time of year, but generally it's pretty stable. It's like I said, hot afternoon, hot summer days, you're going to lose just a tiny bit of flow at the stream gauge. Yeah.
And it's a weir, the stream gauge?
No, the stream gauge is just
stage.
Yeah, it's just.
So what do they do about the cross section?
It's pretty rocky, so it doesn't
change too much, huh?
but they do come out and do these shifts, and we have to kind of accommodate those.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, just the time gap alone, that's understandable as a real inefficiency. So having more data as well will help too. I think any public comments on the agenda?
Yes, we have 3. Mr. Phil Sauter, Larry Minikis, and Ed Jameson.
I've got to thank Director Russell for one of the great lines of the evening. And as one of the dim lights of West Marin, I'd like to thank Paul for another informative presentation. I really appreciate that water efficiency and conservation are listed as both short-term and long-term elements of the water supply roadmap. Though, as Paul mentioned, I don't see the level of specificity that is abundant in the other components of the roadmap. Even the fact that the conservation budget stays at a steady 1.7 million year after year suggests that there's a lack of specific actions being planned. And there wasn't a mention of conservation in the water supply roadmap schedule. Today, I'm holding on to the hope that the water efficiency master plan that I believe will be previewed next month will be at the same level of specificity, funding, and concrete plans that will lead us to our conservation goal of 4 million gallons per day much sooner than 2045. In fact, if the water efficiency master plan doesn't have the same kind of measurable objectives as the other elements do, I'd recommend delaying it until it does. I also think the next 6 to 12 months would be a good time to be giving customers some bits of information so that they can become grounded and conversant with the language of conservation goals. Things like making them aware of indoor versus outdoor water usage, potable versus non-potable, what their current usage is, where we stand relative to other districts, where we'd like to be, what are the big impact options, how do leaks fit into all of this? How many years supply we have in our reservoirs? These are all pieces of information that I think it would be good to have our customers talking about and passing around. So thanks again for the presentation. And I love the way it's developed over the last year, and I look forward to seeing it develop over the next year. Thanks.
Thank
And
you.
the good thing, Phil, is that there's always bright lights in the dim ones too. And you're definitely one of the bright lights.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add to the last item that I appreciate the fact that now you can touch the agenda and touch the item and you go straight to the page, because that was always a real difficulty, especially for these really long agendas. So meant to mention that as well. With the stream gauge, and Paul, thank you for the update, the progress report. Very much appreciate that. Once it gets stolen, they're going to be back. And I see, larger, more secure container and other security features, maybe GPS tracking or something like that. But really the question is, how do you prevent whack-a-mole where, no matter how hard you try, these people, they know there's no one out there, no one's going to catch them, and really think it through so that this doesn't continually happen for you. And I learned something new tonight, that there's gauge and gauge, and gauge with a U. And gauge without the U is the Saxon version. And in about 1892, Norman influences came in and added the U. And it turns out that both are correct, and the USGS uses the shorter version, gauge. I was wondering myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Ed Jamison, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. I have some comments on next month's Water Efficiency Master Plan meeting. I'm pleased with the district's proposal to discontinue rebates on toilets and washing machines. This is a good start to reassessing our conservation programs. But those two programs are tiny compared to other programs that need to be eliminated. The board needs to be shown a recap of actual unit participation for the various programs in fiscal year 2023, along with the estimated future annual water savings for each program at a participation level 20% below that of 2023 to reflect waning conservation participation. And the board needs to be shown the cost per acre foot to both the district and to the ratepayers for each program. The acre foot cost must be for the 22-year forecast period through 2045, not including the drought spike participation of the last 3 years, which are not representative of likely participation levels going forward. Including those years would understate likely future acre-foot costs. At least 90% of the district's $1.7 million conservation budget needs to be allocated to the acre-foot costs of the various programs. And unlike other programs, Laundry to Landscape and Rain Barrels clearly have added customer maintenance costs, costs which were not included in the significantly understated costs presented to the board on July 25th. I believe the board will be surprised at just how little water several of these programs actually save, and that the costs do not justify some of these programs. We buy Sonoma water for a delivered cost of about $1,700 per acre foot. Assuming SWISA participation counts, I believe that future Laundry to Landscape installs will cost about $25,000 per acre foot, and that Rain Barrels will cost about $100,000 per acre foot. Costs would be even higher if the fiscal 2023 participation levels came in below the SWISA participation assumptions. And that's if customers choose to do them. But if customers are forced to install them under the 2016 Graywater Ordinance, and only 1 in 5 customers actually uses them, the cost will be about $100,000 per acre foot for Laundry to Landscape, and about $250,000 per acre foot for Rain Barrels. As for alternatively requiring low waterscape landscaping for all new homes and for major remodels, this Orwellian Big Brother idea has no place in a free society and needs to be scrapped. The 2016 Graywater Ordinance needs to be rescinded. The board needs to assure that ratepayers' money is being spent responsibly on conservation programs, and it is clear that the present course is not doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
Thank you, Terry. Then the next item on our agenda is our review of future board and committee meetings and upcoming agenda items.
Good evening. So I would like to inform the board that we will have our operations committee meeting next Friday. I'm sorry, is it next Friday? No, it's Friday, October 20th. Sorry. Hoping this, oh, it is next Friday. Okay, good. All right. Sorry, I'm hoping October will just go by quickly. And as was already discussed, the recycled water update is one of the key items that will be discussed that day. So the meeting's at 9:30 in the morning. The following week is October 24th with our regular board of directors regular bi-monthly meeting. And a key item that will be discussed is the strategic plan development again. And this time the focus are on our goals. Then on Friday, October 26th, we'll have the Finance and Administration Committee meeting at 9:30 a.m. External meetings, I'm only aware of the ones coming up next month in November. There are two on Friday, the 3rd, North Bay Watershed Association meeting and the Lagunitas Creek Technical Advisory Committee. Then on Monday, November 6th, 9 a.m. is the Sonoma Water Advisory Committee / Technical Advisory Committee meeting, the WACTAC. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I don't remember if we have public comments on this particular item. No.
Well, there aren't that have raised their hands.
Okay. They could. Yes. Okay. Well, then as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, colleagues, today, I'll ask that we adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of Roger Roberts, who passed away last Tuesday. As we've heard from so many of you, Roger was a valued member of the community and a longtime environmental advocate, dedicating much of his time to important issues and initiatives in Marin County, including specifically the work of Marin Water. Roger previously served as board president of the Marin Conservation League and served as co-chair of Marin Water's Water Rate Advisory Committee from 2011 through 2013. For years, Roger has frequently attended Marin Water Board meetings and committees and provided much insightful input on conservation, water supply planning and investment, and watershed protection efforts. I think we all agree that Roger's passion and his dedication to his work truly exemplifies the meaning of a steward of Mount Tam, our county, and far beyond. His consistent presence in this boardroom will be missed, as will his thoughtful words and kind demeanor. I ask that we all keep Roger and his family in our thoughts. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.